Hi, my name is Corey Reeser, and I will be doing this week's Ed Talk on Teaching for Creativity in the Common Core Classroom, chapters 1 through 3. I first want to start out by talking about creativity and the Common Core and my own personal beliefs about content standards and creativity. So when we look at content standards specifically, especially within the context of a social studies classroom, there are specific things that students should and are required to know by the time they graduate high school. So from my own personal perspective in American government and economics, using American government as an example, students need to know what the three branches of government are, how they operate and check one another, how a bill becomes law, and the basic principles that established our country and who the founding fathers were. These are all elements that the students are required to know regardless of their geographic location, and they need to be tested, or their knowledge needs to be tested in a coherent way. And this is where creativity comes in. You can have all the content material you want and all the standardized material you want, but without incorporating creative elements into the content material, the information that you're producing to the students is vague, archaic, and meaningless. So by allowing creative outlets, you are also allowing the students to retain and understand the content material on a much more meaningful level. So when you're looking at content standards versus creativity, they can be one and the same, and this is what Common Core is trying to accomplish. One example I can think of, I was given for math, how we were constantly hearing about all of the pessimism regarding the math standards. A neighbor of mine who's a mechanical engineer simply identified that the creativity aspect of the mathematics portion, which is the most controversial, is the best way at teaching kids how to solve a problem without an equation, meaning they have to figure it out on their own, and this is where you allow the creativity portion for that student. Same thing in social studies. In order for students to solve a problem in American government or economics, they don't necessarily have the solution. So they have to find a creative way to develop a process that addresses the problem and produces a coherent solution to that problem. When you're looking at creativity in the classroom, there are all sorts of creativity. The author identifies these creative elements throughout the book, identifying that there's professional creativity, legendary creativity, everyday creativity, and these are all elements that the teacher can utilize in order to enhance the methods of instruction within their classroom. So for myself personally, it would be a matter of juggling all of these different elements and have the students utilize these creative platforms to produce a product or a collaborative-based project that deals with the social studies content material that we're going over in that unit or that lesson. And it's important to also identify the application, misperceptions, and metacognitions that are involved with creativity. And the author identifies that the first big part of being able to know your own creative strengths and limitations. So it's important to identify what you're good at and what you're not good at so you can apply those elements that surround your personal educational ability and creative ability as well, and how you will apply them toward your educational goal. And in order to apply creative elements, this is basically up to the teacher. It can be applied within the parameters of a social studies classroom and project-based applications. So project-based basically assessments is what I'm trying to get at. So these are all elements that can promote the creative application of the student in terms of accomplishing their educational goals. And the misperceptions of creativity and Common Core range far and wide, but it's also important to understand that these misperceptions are oftentimes rooted in the fact that the parents are looking at these new standards and these new concepts, and they're not familiar to them, meaning that they were not raised in the educational environment learning these concepts, so they will be more hostile toward their children learning new applications that weren't necessarily learned by them in their educational process in secondary classroom. So creative learning environments in the Common Core. It's important to have supportive learning environments and motivate students in the classroom. If you don't have a supportive learning environment to where students feel like they can openly engage in the lesson material in a verbal way, then they're not basically going to collaborate or cooperate with other students in the class. And this is up to the teacher to motivate students to engage with one another and engage with the content material. And this encompasses that supportive learning environment where the teacher is always there to provide a helping hand to the students. And it's important to also understand that teachers need to navigate students through these learning environments in a way that is meaningful and reflective of the students themselves. And this will also enhance the motivation that the students feel in accomplishing the goals within the classroom and everything that would be required of the student within a lesson or unit. So it's important to always understand that learning environments are fluid and always changing, so it's up to the teacher to constantly assess and alter the learning environment to where the teacher can provide the necessary support and educational tools for the students to accomplish their educational goals, and for myself, for American government and economics, to accomplish the lesson objectives that are required for them to graduate high school. And this is my reflection for the Teaching for Creativity, Common Core in the Classroom, chapters 1 through 3.